What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix for Week 16 of the 2021 CFL season. I'm Ryan Coop here with your running back preview. This time around, get you all set for locking in your lineups for the final week of the 2021 regular season. Can't believe it's here already. Quick note on this week, the week starts off Tuesday night with a game between Toronto and Edmonton. There's also 5 games on the schedule this week. Edmonton plays twice, and Elks points are doubled. So keep that in mind as you get set to lock in your lineup. Of course, if you missed it, go back, check out the quarterback preview I released earlier today, and also stay tuned. I'll have your wide receiver and defense previews out later in the day, probably closer to the evening as well. And then on Tuesday, I'll have a depth chart update, and later in the week, I'll have depth charts for the other games as well. So let's dive in and take a look at the options at running back here. And much like the quarterbacks, it's an interesting week because so many teams have their playoff spots either locked in or are for sure missing the playoffs, that the final week of the season is one of those where we could see some timeshares at different positions. Hard to project, but let's take a look at the options here, and let's go top down price wise. Go green light, yellow light, or red light. And the top two most expensive options are William Stanback and Kadeem Carey, and both of these are yellow lights to me. Stanback is $9,229. If you want to get 2.5 points per thousand you spend on him, which would give you full value for a 100-point week in my opinion, you need to get about 23.1 points out of him. And the reason I'm cautious is the matchup with Ottawa is good, which is a plus for me. Stanback is the best running back in the league, another plus. The downside is in recent weeks, his fantasy totals just haven't been there for such an expensive price. 14.5, 10.6, and 9.9 in his past 3 games. Great running back, but doesn't get involved enough in the passing game. And if he doesn't put you up at least a touchdown, puts you a little bit behind the 8 ball in that category. So matchup's good, but the price is too high for me to necessarily lock him in as a guy that's going to hit his value for you. Kadeem Carey is pretty similar, the price being very high. You need 22 points out of him. He's averaging 13.4 on the season. What has he done in recent games? Last week against BC, he put up 16.5. The game before that, put up 21.6 against Ottawa. Kadeem Carey's, he's been a bit of a hit and miss. You know, he hasn't, I think last game might have been the most yardage he's put up in any start for Calgary. He put up 85 yards. Sometimes he gets involved in the passing game. He's touchdown dependent quite a bit. He's got a matchup with the Winnipeg defense that presumably is going to be starting more of their starters, I think, again, just to get them ready for the playoff game in 2 weeks. We'll have to wait and see the depth charts, but I'm a bit cautious on Carey because when the Bombers do have everyone in the lineup, the run defense has been pretty solid as of late. I'm saying stay away from red light on the next 2 options, William Powell and James Wilder Jr. Powell comes in at $8,380. You want to get 21 points out of him to hit value, and I think that's going to be tough to do. I think we've seen Powell in recent weeks, not really get involved in the run game a whole lot. He's gotten involved in the passing game a little bit, which is what you love to see from a running back, but in his past 5 games, 12.7, 8.8, 17, 6.1, and 12.5. So not hitting that 20-point mark at all. I think also, the Riders don't have anything to play for in this game. We could see maybe Keenan LaFrance rotate in, Jamal Morrow potentially as well. And the Ticats have themselves a pretty good run defense. So I'm skeptical. I do not like the option of William Powell. I also don't like the option of James Wilder Jr. Yes, the Elks do play 2 games this week, but I would assume, Wilder's missed the past couple due to injury. It's been a short turnaround of a week. I would assume Fletcher gets the start for at least one of the 2 games, if not both of them. Personally, the way he's been playing lately, I would start Fletcher in both and let him show you really what he can do and maybe help you make some evaluations for next year. But Even, if he plays 1 or 2 games, Wilder's had a tough stretch here in the latter half of the season. 6.6, 7.2, and 3.9 in his past 3 games. You want to get 19.6 out of him on the week. If he plays both games, do I think he could hit that? Yeah, he should be able to. But even then, his totals in recent weeks haven't really shown much encouragement there. So I think there's better options around that price than Wilder Jr. And then we get into the 3 options I like the most this week. James Butler, Don Jackson, and Walter Fletcher. James Butler, to his credit, has become a very solid fantasy producer. And I wrote off all the BC running backs earlier this season, saying, oh, they don't run the ball enough. They don't give them the carries. It's not worth putting them in your lineup. Well, James Butler has turned that around and has been producing very solidly, especially his last 2 games where he's put up 21 and 23.2. You're looking at 3-4 weeks ago. Butler was probably at like a $4,000 salary. Now he's jumped all the way to $7,000. Yes, the price is high. I think for him, for a guy that, they don't really run the ball all that often normally, but they have been a little more so in recent games. In his past 3 games or so, just taking a look at the rushing logs here, he's had over 10 carries in each of the past 3. He's had over 50 yards in each of those. He's also gotten involved in the receiving game. The last 2 games, 6 catches and 7 catches. Michael Riley loves to dump passes to James Butler, and if he can get in for a touchdown yet too, that should be well worth your value. So I do like that option, especially facing an Edmonton defense that's going to be exhausted after already having played 2 games in the past couple of days. Don Jackson, I like him as an option if he is the starter. He did miss last game due to injury, so be cautious there and take note, and we'll have to see whether he gets in for this one. But Hamilton's got a lot to play for. They're fighting for that home playoff game in this final week of the season, and they've been most effective with Don Jackson at the starter position at running back. In his 2 games there, he's put up 18 and 17.6. And we've seen, Walter Fletcher kind of run all over the Riders in the past couple of weeks. I think there's room there for Jackson to have himself a good game if he's the starter there as well. So I do like that option. And my favorite option of the week, and this is honestly, my favorite running back as of late. I love Walter Fletcher. What he's done in the past 2 games for Edmonton since taking over the starting role. He has just been the go-to player for them. He's dominated a game. He had 99 yards of offense in the first half last game against the Riders team that's supposed to be good against the run. A lot of the offense goes through him. I think he gets at least 1 start this week. I'm hoping he gets both of them. If he gets both of them, this is an absolute lock, hands down, for him to hit 15 points across 2 games, I think. He's also facing, the Argos have given up some decent points to the running backs this year. The Lions have given up, they are one of the worst teams against the run here. So they are actually the worst team against running backs. So I really like Fletcher as an option this week. In his past 2 games, 19 and 18.6 for him. And he's been a go-to part of that offense. So there's always the risk that he's not going to play both. I think even then, 1 game to hit 15 points, I think he should be able to do it. So I like Walter Fletcher this week. I do not like the option of Sean Thomas Erlington. If he starts, maybe that moves him up to a yellow light for me. But he did start last week and put up just 8 points against the Argos. So in his past 3 games, he's put up 8 or under. He hasn't really broken a big performance this year. I think it's going to be tough to hit value with him, especially if he's in a backup role. I am saying red light on Brady Oliveira of the Bombers. The past couple of games, 6.7 and 8.7 for him. The problem with him is it's a bit of a timeshare there at the running back position. Johnny Augustine should get in for a couple plays here and there as well, I would imagine. And I am a bit concerned about the value of Oliveira in that category as well. So I think this is going to be a tightly contested game between these 2 teams, and I'm not sold on him hitting 14.3. I think there's better options available at a similar price. John White did miss last game due to injury. I believe he's on the 6-game injured list, so do not pick John White. I don't think it would be worth your value, even if he was playing, given his play this year. And then we get into some of the other options here. Again, lots to choose from this week at running back due to the roster situations this week. DJ Foster was the starting running back last week for Toronto. Put up just 9.8 points against Hamilton. Fell a bit short of the value. Cautious here on Foster because the Argos have locked up first place in the East. How much will they be playing, guys? I could see a situation where Tuesday night AJ Ouellette is getting a bulk of the playing time at the running back position to save Foster for the playoffs if John White is out. So I'm cautious there. Starting running back gets involved in the passing game. Is a dynamic player, should be able to hit a 13.6 value or close to that, but the playing time is maybe a bit of a concern for me there. I don't like the option of Timothy Flanders of the Red Blacks. He got the start last game after missing the few before that. Had a great game, was the best part of that offense for Ottawa. He put up almost 100-yard rushing, but the problem is that equated to a 10.2 point game. I think that was probably, rushing-wise close to the ceiling for him. I don't think we're going to see him dominate, especially against a really good Montreal run defense. I don't think we're going to see Flanders hit that value or close to it this week. I mentioned AJ Ouellette already. If he is in fact starting at running back this week, I do like that option as a cheaper play. He 2 weeks ago took over, when John White went down in that game and put up 10.7 points in not even a full game of football. You need 11.3 out of him. He's also facing the Elks, who do give up one of the highest point totals to running backs. I think AJ Ouellette's a great player and could be leaned on as they try to rest some of their veterans. So I like that option if he does get the start on Tuesday. Don't like DeLance Turner for the same reasons I don't love Timothy Flanders as an option. I think Ottawa's run game is going to struggle against Montreal's defense. Anthony Coombs is a receiver but is listed as a running back. $3,604. His price has dropped a good amount, but the fantasy totals just haven't been there. In his past 4 or 5 games, his highest total has been 7.6. He had a 0 last game, and we saw how much the passing game struggled for Ottawa last time around. I would not be surprised to see that happen again this time, so don't like Coombs. Johnny Augustine I don't love as an option for the same reason I don't like Brady Oliveira this week, because I could see it being a pretty even split between these two. Or there is the potential for them to lean heavily on Oliveira and not use Augustine much at all, like last week where he put up just 1.5 points. Martese Jackson has been handling returns in a couple games for Montreal this year. Hasn't really gotten anything going there. 2 points and 2.7 in his 2 games so far this year. Not worth the play at running back with a lot of good options this week. Ante Milanovic-Litre at 3,000. This one's a bit interesting to me. I put this as a yellow light because, he hasn't really produced in a lot of games this year. Last week he put up a 0. The game before that, though, he put up a 6.4. If Calgary's, playing this game going along, depending on the depth chart situation, do they give Kadeem Carey a bit of a rest? Do they lean on Milanovic-Litre a little bit in what should be a tough game here down the stretch? I could see a potential there. I don't think this is a great fantasy play, but I think it's a potentially viable, real cheap one if you need to save some cash to spend at other positions. I would say it's a very low-end yellow light here on Milanovic-Litre. Malik Irons at 26.06 sometimes gets involved in the offense for Hamilton. Last week put up 4.7 points, but more often than not, you're getting either a 0 or close to that out of him. I don't think it's worth your value to take Malik Irons. And finally, Jamal Morrow of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Last week had a big game, big return, put up 9.3 points against Saskatchewan. He had a game earlier this year of 7.8. He's had a couple games around the 5-point range as well. So he's hovered around close to value, which makes a potential real cheap punt option here. at the running back position. Again, probably not one that's going to break you a huge week, but if you're strapped for cash and you just want to try to hit close to, if not full value, Jamal Morrow is a potential option for you there. And we'll see. Perhaps he gets involved in the run game if they decide to give a bit of a break to William Powell. I still think Keenan LaFrance would be the guy in that case, and Morrow will probably be, specifically left for kick returns. So those are your options at running back for the final week of the regular season. Really like James Butler, Don Jackson, or Walter Fletcher. I'd probably say Fletcher and Butler are my two top options there. Then I like Jackson. I also like A.J. Ouellette as a cheap play there as well. I think there's also some potential plays with some of the higher priced guys like Stanback and Kadeem Carey, and cheaper options like DJ Foster, Ante Melandri-Tuitre, and Jamal Morrow. So those are your options at running back to consider for the week. Make sure you get those lineups set before the game Tuesday night if you want any Edmonton or Toronto players in there at least. And you can tinker the rest of your lineup later in the week, of course. So make sure you get those lineups set. Go back, check out the quarterback preview to help you out at that position. Stay tuned later today, probably closer to the evening. I'll have wide receivers and defense previews for you as well. Depth chart update video out on Tuesday, and another depth chart update later in the week for all the other games also. So do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't. If you have any fantasy questions, put them in the comments section or tweet them at me at CooperTrooper42 on Twitter. A link to that's in the video description. And if you want to play CFL Fantasy alongside myself and other viewers, there's a link in the description to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix group over on the official CFL Fantasy site. You can play alongside myself and others this week and throughout the 2021 playoffs as well. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.